What's good, internet? My name is attackslug. I've been here on YouTube for quite some time, and one question I get pretty consistently over the years is, hey, do all of those still work? And so today, I honestly don't know, and we're gonna find out. But also, I have a brand new piece of hardware to add to my ridiculous setup here. It is a RetroTINK 5X Pro. This allows for capture of old consoles on new TVs, and I can't wait to try it out here on the show today. Let's get moving, let's go. The Atari 2600 came out way back in 1977. That's right, this thing is nearly 45 years old. Now, this was not the original unit I had growing up as a child, as that got destroyed during a high school science fair thing of some type. I forget, it's been a long time. But this one actually was a gift from some fans at a nerdcore show like 10 or 15 years ago. And so big thanks to Buck and Scott for coming through with that. This is the only console in this video that cannot be hooked up to the brand new RetroTINK because it does not have components, composite, or S-video. It is coaxial cable. So here we are on the trusty Philips CRT TV, set to channel 3 VHF. So without further ado, let us turn on the Atari 2600. Oh, look at that. It is fully functional, and I have queued up Kaboom for one particular reason. No matter how many times this game gets re-released on other platforms, they don't have this guy. This controller right here, you need for the precision in this game. So we will hit the game reset. We will hit the button to play. You can see there, look at the nice finesse here on that motion, right? This is a 45-year-old controller. So Kaboom, if you don't know, is catch the bombs, right? But you need the finesse to catch those bombs in those buckets of water. And of course, it's gonna get faster, so it is a high-score game, as games used to be, and you just can't do this on modern controllers. An analog stick is not gonna cut it here for this particular game. Now, I do have a mystery ROM here that I think might be E.T. I honestly don't know. We're gonna find out if it actually works or not. Okay, it is definitely not E.T. It is bowling. Can I play some bowling here? I can. Look at these graphics. Yeah, bowling on the 2600. Ah, one pin left. Now, as a general rule, when it comes to consoles and their aging, the less moving parts, the better. So clearly not having a disk drive here means that even 45 years later or so, it still is a functional. So you kind of want to roll it and then do some of that. Yeah, okay, a strike. And that concludes our look at the oldest system in my collection. The Super Nintendo, aka the SNES, aka the SNES, came out in 1991, making this a whopping 31 years old. And just like the Atari, this was not my original SNES as a child. Number one, I had a Genesis, because Genesis does. But number two, that SNES was my sister's, and she still has that. So this I bought on eBay for about 40 bucks, like 15 years ago, and this model in particular only has yellow on the controller ports and not the whole bottom of the unit, which is great. And so, on an S-video connection, let's turn it on. And we get nothing. Okay, I got the magic ingredient here, and that may have hopefully fixed things with the Super Nintendo. And would you look at that? In brilliant S-video on a CRT, we have Super Mario All-Stars. This is not the one that includes Mario World, unfortunately. So, you know, Mario 3. And that looks pretty good, considering it is so freaking old. And here we go. Mario Start. And look at that. A fully functional Super Nintendo 31 years later. No, come back, Mushroom. Now, we've done it on a CRT TV, but let's hook up the brand new bit of hardware, that RetroTINK. SNES into the RetroTINK into the 55-inch HD 4K TV. I can even add scan lines if I'd like, but honestly, let's just have a nice clean image here with no scan lines. Open up some Mario Bros. Yeah, sure. World 8. Let's do that. Here we go with the All-Stars version of a Mario 1 on the RetroTINK. And I'm playing it with one hand here, so that makes things, you know, difficult for me to do. And then I just die. But if you're wondering why you would spend 300 on this particular device and die again, it's because it's number one, upscaling the image, and number two, it is lag-free. It's the best option besides buying a FrameMeister or an OSSC. And I would certainly recommend this over those for the simplicity of the entire thing. Which brings us to our first CD-based console on this video. It is the Sega Saturn, released in 1995, so it is 27 years old. This model was made in 96, so only 26 years old, still pretty old. I did not have a Saturn when it came out. I went from the Genesis and Sega CD to the N64, so I missed that entire era of Sega. But this is not my first Saturn, so I actually had the white import one back in like 04, 05, and then sold that at some point and bought this off of eBay for like 40 bucks in like 2008, I think. And this was the first console where I actually had to get out a soldering gun to put in the mod chip. Now then, I just replaced the 2032 battery in the back of this deal. I have my Action Replay with extra RAM there for save files, and I have my copy of Daytona USA. Let's turn it on. Here is where things get interesting. Power! Because we now have a disc-based system, and we have more points of failure. So yes, it turns on and it works, but will it read the disc to play the game? That's going to be the question. 1994, great year, but no, we're in 2022. That's not good. Let's get the regular Saturn boot screen here. And there is your main menu. And why is it getting kind of wonky on the screen sometimes? Let me actually check all of my connections here for the S video. That might be a thing because of the CRT TV, I'm not sure. But hey, we're going to find out, because after I do this here on this TV, then it gets hooked up to the new hardware, and we'll see how it behaves on that HD TV. More importantly, let us boot it with a disc, like so. And see if we get those blue skies in Daytona. And does it still read discs, and does that still work? Now, there is, for a lot of older disc-based systems, there is optical drive emulation, and so you get a adapter or a chip with an SD card, and it bypasses the disk drive entirely. And I would love to do that for all these systems, but it gets pretty costly at a certain point. So here, that's not like, it's not supposed to be doing that. Maybe it's just the cable, maybe it's the system, like something is definitely loose somewhere. Importantly, does the game work? I mean, technically, yes, but also, it shouldn't be doing that. So that's going to be, perhaps it needs a new cable. Start your engines in Daytona. Yeah, this TV perhaps is on its way out. It was fine when I filmed the last two systems, so perhaps it's just an issue with the Saturn here. I'm not sure. Rolling starts! And here we go. Daytona USA on the Saturn, a great arcade port. Now I'm very curious when I hook it up to some new on how it's going to work, and hopefully not be doing that. So let's go and now change over to the RetroTINK. Okay, here we are on the standard RetroTINK screen, and this is great because my capture kit is currently capturing even though the game system right now is off, and it will keep capturing regardless of hitting reset or anything else, and that's awesome for my purposes here of capturing old hardware. And then boot on the Saturn, and hopefully not get all those weird lines that were happening on my CRT TV. Now, replacing this disk drive with a SD card solution is out there. It is called the Satiator. How much do you actually like the Saturn is kind of the question there, because that's pretty steep. Eventually, I plan to get one. Not soon, but eventually. So here we are with the Gen, PS1, and Saturn sampling. Let's turn that little thing there off and hit start. And this looks clean. This is why you get this particular bit of business, because you don't have to rely on a functional 20-plus-year-old CRT TV. Being able to go all digital with an analog system is pretty freaking fantastic. So here we are. Hit the gas. Rolling start. Daytona. Let's go away. And here we are. So, again, we have options to add in scan lines. We can change our filtering here between soft and sharp. We got soft and we got sharp. And depending on what you prefer and what system you're playing, you can change things on your interpolation. It is the C button is gas. Alright, I was not. It's been a number of years since I played Daytona USA. So I forgot it is C for gas, not A for gas. That makes more sense on lap 2. But regardless, let us move on to the next system here. We've got a bunch more to look at. Continuing in 1995, we have the original Sony PlayStation. Now, this one does have the manufacturing date on the box, and it is July of 1998, so only 24 years old. And much like the Saturn, I did not buy one when it came out, and I was not on that train because at the time it was all about that Nintendo Ultra 64. And so this came from a friend of mine. Either I traded it or bought it, I can't quite recall, but this one I got in particular because it has the I/O port on the back, which allows for the plug mod. And so today, testing both the console itself and does that plug mod still work. Now this is the one console I don't have S-Video for, and it does not support component, so I only have composite video, just yellow, red, and white. And so, the moment of truth. Turning the machine on and seeing that hopefully wonderful PS1 boot up screen. There it is. There we go. At least that still works. Now, does it still read discs? We're going to find out, but that part works. And I have a memory card. What is on that memory card? I have to wonder, after this many years with a PS1. I see Rayman on there. I see Reptar on there. Wait. Okay, perhaps this memory card is not the best because I didn't press anything. More importantly, will it read a disc? Popping in some Twisted Metal 1. And so far, so good. That drive does not sound the best. That does not sound great, but again, it's 24 years later. And it's still reading and hopefully playing this copy of Twisted. Yeah, that's not so. The thing with these models is that after a while, they'd have heat issues, and turning them upside down seemed to fix some of those heat issues. So, yes, it seems to have locked up trying to read this disc of Twisted Metal. Okay, putting in a copy of Harvest Moon and launching it upside down and seeing if that fixes the issue. Perhaps that copy of Twisted Metal a bit too banged up. Now, is the memory card screwed here, or can I actually load this? I'm hitting X and it's not actually doing anything, so more importantly to me, does the plug mod still work? Now, I know a lot of folks use mod chips for nefarious purposes. For me, it's all about the import games. And so basically, you turn it on, there's the mod, it'll spin up the actual disc, the proper disc for the proper region. It'll stop, you'll pop it out, and pop in your import copy of Vib Ribbon, a fantastic rhythm game that eventually did get released on the PS3 and Vita digitally, and they said PS4, it never happened. And there, after a bit of a wait, because again, this disk drive is definitely struggling, and this game can use your own CDs to make stages, which is also pretty freaking cool. But there he is, it's Vibri, the titular star of Vib Ribbon. My reasoning behind modifying systems at the time was to play games I could not get here in America. Now these days, it's a bit more easier because A, most systems are region free, and B, most games that I want to play end up getting localized. So I do believe this drive laser is on its way out, as it is no longer attempting to read this VIB ribbon disc. When I try to make it load and read the disc for the actual thing, it's saying nah. Of course, the quality that you put into a device like this depends on the quality that you get out from a device like this, so don't expect a magic bullet as such. And also, SmackDown 2 Know Thy Role on the PS1 has loaded up here, and hopefully it actually works. So I think for me, this thing needs some kind of an optical disc replacement, as this drive is definitely not pulling its weight these days. But like I said, the disc drive, the main point of failure with this kind of thing. So Steve Blackman, the lethal freaking weapon, versus Did Man Wowkin. So definitely a problem in that the videos are not playing here for the entrances. Or we just get no video at all. Like, the game is working, I can feel it rumbling here, but I got no video. So I will try one last thing. A pristine copy of Persona 2 for the PS1 that I paid a whopping $40 for back in like 05, which these days goes for way, way more than that. And also is not ported anywhere else in English. It's on PSP in Japan. Well, the point of this video was, do these systems work? And this one is filed under a not really. But thankfully I have plenty of ways to play PS1 games, actual discs, including multiple PS2s and PS3s. So I'm not that worried about a PS1 not quite working as intended. Let's move on. Nintendo 64! Welcome to 1996 and the N64, the first console in this video that's been in my possession the entire time. The first console I ever had on pre-order at KB Toys, which no longer exists. This is the first console that gets packed every time I have to move. It's gone cross-country and back. It survived every ex-girlfriend. It is still my N64. And this has been used on this channel for Perplexing Pixels, so I assume it still works. We're gonna find out right about now. And it's a him, Mario. Functional N64 confirmed, and no worry about a failing disk drive with solid state media. My original save file, and I assume I played some more, or my sister, or I don't know, but man, 120 stars, I did that back in 96. And what do you know, controller still works and everything. So, Mario 64, a game that changed the face of the industry for all time. So, good times. Now, let's put it on that RetroTINK, shall we? Say what you will about the limited library of the N64, they still had some bangers though, and certainly the wrestling games were top-notch in this time period. And yes, here we are playing WrestleMania 2000 on an authentic N64, running through a RetroTINK, obviously S-video and not a RGB type connection or SCART or any of that, but hey, it gets the job done, and more importantly for me, it is easy to capture, and there's no capture issues with that. So, gonna say, hey, I was Stone Cold with a trash can. This is not no DQ, is it? I guess it's not. Alright, I didn't know. Suplex City. Okay, this is done. Let us move on to the next console on the list, shall we? It's thinking! The Sega Dreamcast launched on 9/9/99, which is 23 years ago. This unit made in October of 2000, so sad to say I was not on that Dreamcast train while it was still a healthy console. No, I bought mine when it was on clearance for $50 after it already died. So yes, I guess that makes me part of the problem, but look, I had my funds all tied up pre-ordering a GameCube. I'm sorry. So how does the final console from Sega fare all these years later? Let's turn it on and find out. And yes, I have the VMU in the controller. It is indeed thinking. That should be orange, shouldn't it? That's like black and white. There we go. That's better. What is on this VMU? I am curious. Skies of Arcadia, last used 2006. Does this Dreamcast still read the GD-ROM? That is the question. Will it still read this disc? Because again, this system can also have an ODE installed into it and read games off an SD card, and that's obviously, eventually all disk drives die, so here we go, 2000, the World Wrestling Federation Entertainment. Wait, what? And on the VMU here, it's just saying Royal Rumble over and over again. You kind of can't see it on this thing, but you know, it's there. If you don't know, this was an arcade game originally, and oh, it's my tag team partner is Taz, or my manager, not actually my opponent. It is Chris Jericho here, and you know, this game was not the best, but it did what it did, and it was amazing because you had so many guys in the ring at the same time back in 2000. Anyhow, let's get on that new hardware as 3 more guys were in the ring. The Rock, Mankind, and Rikishi. He did it for The Rock. He did it for the people. And they ran right out, and that was it. That was a very brief interference there. So one thing I can appreciate now about Dreamcast is just how weird they got with their accessories. You had maracas, you had a fishing controller, and yes, I can use a full keyboard to play Typing of the Dead. Get out of the way, Mavis Beacon and Mario Teaches Typing. We have zombies here, and those zombies will make you suffer, like G did. And having a little keyboard, yeah, I screwed that up already. My bad. I was not paying attention. And let's go. C, D, C, M, M-O. It is Typing of the Dead, and it is a hilarious hyena mash. This is House of the Dead 2 with typing, and that's amazing. Pendant, points, I did that, demotion, rank A. That is the Dreamcast. It tickles my funny bone. It is a little over the hill at 20-something years old here, but hey, what can you do? So let's move on to our next deal here on this raging scene. And thus we reach the big dog, the behemoth, the PlayStation 2. Released in 2000, so 22 years ago. I didn't have a PS2 until after GTA 3, and even then, I owned that game before I owned the console, just in case I got banned, you never know. But this PS2, I bought in 2003 because it was the final model before they went to the PS2 Slim. And the reasoning is that it fits the hard drive, and you could modify the memory card to load games off of the hard drive. And I got that hard drive from a clearance copy of Final Fantasy XI, which came with a hard drive, because you needed it for that game. Now, PS2, do you still work? Now here, we have an extra point of failure. Not only is it, alright, does it turn on, we also have now, does the disk drive work, but also you have a moving mechanical disk drive. And those can eventually die as well, because there are parts that move. But so far, so good on the PS2, booting up as intended. Now, I do have a confession to make. This copy of Harvest Moon was actually my ex's, and I took it with me when I moved out, because this copy of the game is tied to the memory card, and that ties to the hard drive. Now, this drive actually right now is dead, and I'm looking to get it replaced with an SD card solution at some point this year. But watch, when it boots that game with that memory card, then we get the HDL menu screen, because I tied that game to that memory card. So, my apologies. I'm not even sure that she knows what happened to that game, but yeah, I've had it the whole time. There you go, could not find it. So this was a new hard drive in like 05, I believe. So it's been a little bit. And so the reasoning for loading games off of a hard drive is twofold. Number one, you save the wear and tear on the laser, and those are notoriously fragile in the PS2. Number two, you can actually play import games without having to buy an import PS2. With these notoriously fickle PS2 lasers, the big question is not PS2 games as we usually know them. It is the early games that were not on DVDs, that were still on CDs, the blueback games. Because when your laser is failing, that is the first thing it stops reading are the CD-based games. But would you look at that, it appears it still reads this CD. And again, I've saved a lot of the wear and tear by loading games off the hard drive for a number of years. Let's load this 2004 save file and see where it's at. And here we are, Mr. Mosquito, functional and playable, and I've forgotten what all of the controls are. If we can get there, we can get to the spot on his head and suck some blood. Oh, I missed. Anyhow, let's move on. This is actually not my only PS2. I have a second backup unit because my mom's boss was clearing out a house and was like, here's a PS2. I'm not going to turn down a free console. So I have a backup of a similar model that is also in great condition. And this is SMT3 Nocturne. And I did not finish this game. There's no save data. So what happened was I transferred my PS2 save data onto my fat PS3. Forgot I did that. Now on PS2, there are games that support 16:9 through progressive scan in 480p. I honestly don't know if I actually own any, but there are some. And this here is Raw Danger, aka Disaster Report 2. But anyhow, that's PS2, let's move on. Next up, the Nintendo GameCube, that lunchbox, launching in 2001, so 21 years ago. I did have a GameCube at launch. I bought it from an import shop, and it had a region-free mod switch. And then I sold that purple launch model to a friend of mine because I wanted to buy the one that played DVDs. This GameCube I bought at the Too Many Games convention about 5 years ago for like $50, and I made sure it had the digital out for the component video because that got removed in the later models. And so two things right now. Number one, I currently have no idea where my GameCube memory card is. It is in this room somewhere, but good lord, I can't find it right now and it is absolutely driving me nuts. Number two, one of the main reasons that I bought this RetroTINK in the first place is because of the poor performance in the Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania collection that came out last year of my all-time favorite minigame in Super Monkey Ball, which is Monkey Target, did not perform as it did originally on that GameCube. They totally screwed up the physics. I don't know how you managed to ruin an absolute classic, but they did. Now granted, the main stages in that collection are fine. It is specifically the party game of Monkey Target, which is totally busted in that version of the game. So here is the original, and I have some grandiose plans for this and my friends to have a video at some point this year, so I guess look forward to that. But the proper physics with a Monkey Target here is what you want on the original GameCube. Look at that, 50 points off the bat. Now before I hook this up to the RetroTINK, I have to at least show you the Panasonic Q and explain what is currently broken in that Q. Now for those who don't recall or weren't alive yet, 20 years ago, game systems that played DVDs were a big deal because standalone DVD players were pretty expensive. So PS2 had it out of the box. Xbox had it with an add-on, and the GameCube only had it in Japan with this Panasonic Q. But much like with your standard GameCube, you can change the region with a switch here on the bottom between Japan and USA. Now, the problem with this very fragile system is that yes, it does work. It'll say hello on the LCD, except for one serious problem. And that is the magnet that holds the DVD in place, like when you put it in the drive, that magnet has, after 20 years, disintegrated. And so, also, I did replace the band here that should open this thing, and now it's not opening. So again, it's been 20 plus years, and it's got some problems. So it does technically work, but I wouldn't ever actually put a game in there until I find a magnet that actually fits in that thing and hopefully fix this drive tray. Or just finally say screw it and put it on eBay. I'm not sure yet. But I do know at least one GameCube game I own has a 16:9 progressive scan, widescreen, and that is indeed F-Zero GX. Also one of the most difficult games on the GameCube, and also there are ways to unlock the arcade tracks on this version of the game. F-Zero in glorious 480p, upscaled to 1080p. We still have more systems to look at in this video. We're not quite done yet. Continuing in 2001, we have the original Xbox, which up until last year was the largest console in my collection, and then that PS5 came out. But this Xbox was bought in the summer of '02 with the release of Morrowind, because I did not have a gaming PC and I needed to play that game. And while they've certainly made some amazing strides in backwards compatibility with the Xbox One and Xbox Series consoles, there are still games like Spike Out Battle Street that are not backwards compatible. Now, this Xbox itself, the DVD drive is toast, and I've tried to fix it and failed. Now, thankfully, I have the mod chip, which allows for 2 running games on the hard drive. But I will show you how this drive does not read games anymore. Most unfortunate. It opens, unlike the Q, but it cannot read the games anymore. The one thing that I've said this whole video is that eventually there are these points of failure, and the lasers on these drives is definitely a large point of that failure. Your Xbox can't recognize this actual Xbox game because that laser is shot. Thankfully, I had the foresight at the time to install a solder-free mod chip. This does, thankfully, still work, and therefore I can load games from the hard drive. WrestleMania 21, baby! So yes, the Xbox does indeed still work and still run games, albeit off the hard drive. I would love to put in a much larger drive and then do things that way. That whole process of cloning the drive and making sure you have everything situated and locking, unlocking, all that stuff, like, I've done it, but it's been a number of years, so that's going to be some work to get that done at some point this year to keep this thing running as long as humanly possible. And now we get something more modern with a widescreen in the options for 80p, 720p, and 1080i. Now, I did make sure to remove the capacitor in here that controls the clock, because that thing is known to fail and totally toast the whole Xbox at a certain point. And so, as I hunt these dinosaurs in the Japan-only release, Dinosaur Hunting, otherwise, this Xbox off the hard drive still runs games, still operates, still functions, and there are games that you can't get anywhere else that are not backward compatible, and they've finished their run of that on the Xbox. They've said, hey, we've done what we can with licensing and those games. They're dinosaurs, and they seem a little upset at me running around in this deal. So, hey, Mr. Dinosaur, I shoot you and you stomp on me and I die. Now, we have one more analog console to look at. Let's get into that one. Which brings us to the final console with analog wires in this video. It is the Nintendo Wii, and perhaps you're thinking, man, that ain't that old. Well, it came out in 2006, which is 16 years ago. If this console was a person, it could legally drive. Now, I did not pre-order the Wii at launch because I was in the middle of moving back to New Jersey, but I did camp out in front of Target for 14 or so hours on launch day. So I didn't get a pre-order, but I did get a launch unit. And that was the only time I've ever camped out for a console. It was an interesting experience, but yeah, never again. And so, with my trusty Wiimote here, gonna hit that power button, gonna pop on the Wii. It's gonna be all scrambly because I have that custom firmware. So with the GameCube controller, I hit the A button, and then we get the actual proper Wii menu. So yes, this thing, like a lot of my old consoles, is hacked to hell and back because I enjoy doing such things. But here we are on the main Wii menu with our motion-controlled thing, and we'll see, does the DVD drive still work 16 years later? I'm going to pop in an excellent light gun shooter here, and it is Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles. And I'm not seeing it yet. Oh, there it is. Now, funny enough, Speaking of a wrist strap, when my cousins were very young and this was a brand new thing, one of those wrist straps broke, which had one of these controllers flying into this TV, and thankfully did not break either. A bit of a heart attack moment there with a brand new console. And there is my save file at 9 hours and 40 minutes. That seems long, but okay. Let's make us a Jill sandwich here at the Spencer Mansion. Shall we? It's good old Resident Evil. Shoot them zombies, don't get bit. And I know some folks will say, this seems like a lot of work, what about emulation? And yes, I love emulation. I think that preserving the history of video games is very important. But there's something for me about having original games on original hardware as they were intended to be played and run that still has that nostalgic appeal. Because certainly some games just get stuck on hardware and there's not much you can really do about it otherwise, and those companies at a certain point just don't care. If you consider games to be art, preserving that art is important at the end of the day. I love the fact that emulation can make games look better, right, than they ever could have originally. Like, I love that. But at the same time, there is still that appeal of playing on an original bit of business and hardware. Plenty of games here on the Wii that you can't find anywhere else, and having an actual week to play them is still pretty cool, even if there was a lot of motion control garbage on this platform. But I have one last thing to discuss on this video, and that is the other release in 2006, the PlayStation 3, which I bought in 07 as they were getting rid of the PS2 backward compatibility, so it's not quite the full launch model compatibility, but it's still pretty good, and up until now, my best option at capturing PS2 games over a digital solution because it had an HDMI in the back. And as far as I know, it still works. You can see here, I did buy Bib Ribbon when it came out in English digitally on PS3 and the Vita, but more importantly, does this thing still read PS2 games like my save file from Nocturne is on this console? So we're going to pop in the Nocturne disc and we're going to see how it behaves. And hopefully it won't change resolution here and this capture won't die, but I imagine that launching this with the component cables through the RetroTINK would be a way around my thing dropping the capture when it launches a PS2 game in a different resolution. And there is the Nocturne save file, 15 hours and 5 minutes into it, and I got lost in this freaking prison and I could not escape. Will I ever be like the king? Hee-ho? I own the PS4 version, and I'm going to play it on a PS5 at some point, but man, I'm just busy. And so now I can finish this video, spend a bunch of time doing the editing, and then be done with my knowledge that all these consoles work, except for that PS1 laser has a problem. So let's wrap up what we know and wrap up this video with Tornado Weakness. There we go. And thus concludes a look at all of my retro consoles, both functional and not so much. Still can't find that GameCube memory card. It's somewhere. But at this point, my plan was to do one thing. Go, hey, what about the handhelds? And as I filmed over a couple days, I was like, wait, that's going to be way too long of a video. Let's table that for now and just do the consoles. So I am your host, attackslug. This was my video on what works and what don't work, and I'll see you next time, hopefully soon, for more videos right here, this channel. I'll see you then, and I'm out.